Okay, so this is a question asked over email, and this is problem 3.3.61. They ask us to construct a truth table for the given statement, and so this is that statement that they're asking us to construct a truth table for. So the first thing that we want to do when we're constructing truth tables is set up our columns here for P and Q. And then, we want to build this across. So we have P, we have Q, and then we're going to build whatever's next in our statement. So you see here that we have Q implies P. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put another P column here so that in the next column I can do Q implies P. Okay. Then I'm going to do a not Q, and I'm going to do a P column so that I can assemble in my next column the not Q or P. And then it's going to be a matter of assembling what we're actually looking for, which is going to be this column and this column using a conditional. Okay, so this will be this last column here, Q implies P implies not Q or P. Okay, all right, so we always start our truth tables by allowing P to be true, true, false, false, and then we allow Q to be true, false, true, false. And that takes care of every situation for P and Q. So we have P and Q being both true, one being true, the other being false, and P true, Q false, and vice versa, and then both being false. Okay, so that takes care of all three scenarios. So what I'm going to do in this column then, because this is another P column, is true, true, false, false. Now the reason that I'm recopying P here is because my conditional goes in order from Q to P, and I think it's always good on these truth tables to just look in order. So, if I'm looking at a true and a false and a true, that's different than, a true and a false. We have the true and the false here, but in some of these problems it won't matter, but in some of them it will. Okay, so when I now look at my conditional, and here's your conditional truth table, you can see that whenever you're dealing with a true and a true on the conditional, you're going to get true. A true and a false, you're going to get false. A false and a true, you're going to get true. And a false and a false, you're going to get true. So the only time you end up with a false is when you have a true first and a false second. Okay, so let's look at that. A true first and a false second, that gives me a false for the conditional. Okay, and what I'm doing is I'm using the conditional between these two columns. It doesn't matter that this is Q and this is P. What I'm looking at are the truth values. So if I have a true implying a true, that's going to be true. A false implying true is true. False implying false is true. And then, true implying false is that one false condition. Okay, not Q here is just we're going to be negating these truth values. So if you had true, that becomes false, false becomes true, and then false, and then true. My P column, just going to copy back down P, so true, true, false, false. And then now between this column here and this column here, I'm doing an OR. Okay, so I'm doing a disjunction. So if I look at my truth table for the disjunction, the only time that it's false is when you have both being false. Okay, so if I look at this here, I have a false and a false here, so that's going to give me false, and everything else is going to give me a true. Okay, and now what I'm doing is I'm trying to take the conditional between this column right here and Q implies P, so this column right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the truth values in these two columns that are starred, and I'm going to use the conditional to set up what the result would be here. So you see here I have a true and I have a true, and if you go back to your conditional truth table, true and a true is a result of true. And then I have a true and a true again, so true implies true is true. And then a false and a false, go back to your table, false there and false there, go back to your table, and that's true, and then true and true is true. Okay, and then they ask you a question here on the last part of this question, they say, is the statement a tautology? And you would answer yes there, because a tautology is when you end up with all true values for your, after you construct your truth table, the last column here, if it has all true values, then that's what we call a tautology. Okay, so yes, this is a tautology. Okay.